Hey, Brett.
All right, Josh, you can hear me okay? Good. Okay, we got 7 p.m., February 3rd, 2025. This is the scheduled time and place for tonight's city commission meeting. We don't have a full board, but we do have a quorum, so we can get started. Let's start with our pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first up, we've got minutes for January 1st, 2025. That was the regular commission meeting. You guys don't see anything that needs to be modified. We'll need a motion to approve.
Move to approve the minutes. A second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the minutes as written. We'll move to a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Commissioners report. Kyle, what do you got?
Don't be anything too promising, still working on the landfill. Feed, I guess, I'll hopefully have something before, or at the next meeting. What I got to be covered on, new business number 5.
I don't have anything earth shattering. I did talk to O'Day today. And it sounds like they'll have a number back for us this week on a refund for that fuel station. We had that down payment out there and they were gonna work on what they could return, what the restocking fee would look like. Heard crickets from them for like a month. Turns out they had some personnel issues, but money's coming our way and we should know what that number would be.
Excuse me, Mayor, what is the deposit that you're waiting for a refund for?
It was like 93,000 of the 375. So it was a big chunk.
City paid 93,000 already as a deposit for that.
Yeah. You know, it was a pretty significant down payment, but they had a lot of equipment that needed to be ordered, special tanks, pumps, a lot of that stuff actually came from Florida. So when they had their little hurricane spell a couple months ago, everything just got shut down, so they couldn't get a hold of the vendors. We just kind of had to sit and wait. Once shop opened back up for them, the O'Day rep, he went on vacation, he got back from vacation, slipped, fell, broke some ribs, was out of work. It's just been a long drawn out thing, but not something that we forgot about, like. But we know that there's gonna be a restocking fee of some sort, but getting something is better than getting nothing back.
Thank you, sir, and we appreciate your attention and time that you have to put into this subject that was, before all of your, review. Appreciate that.
Sorry. Not feeling too great tonight, so I'm gonna keep the talking to a minimum. Got a little bit coming up, but Josh is gonna help me cover that, so that's on the business. That's it.
All right, we're on to modification or approval of the agenda. Do you guys want to add anything? I know we're gonna try to keep everything clean for Josh, so. Kind of his night tonight.
There's nothing to add, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as written. We'll move to a vote.
Yes.
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 Motion carries. All right, old business. Liz, are you on? Liz is on.
I am. There I am.
And
Can
we
you all hear?
you.
All right, very good. You anticipated my question. Well, good evening, everyone. I actually am very brief tonight. Looks like a nice and short agenda. As promised, I will keep the commission updated with additional legal matters as they become known to me. I think we addressed most of those at the last meeting. I do expect here within the next month, there'll be some more updates. We will be likely entering depositions in the next couple of months for the city road construction work. I don't have any dates nailed down, and I'm internally trying to work on those on my calendar, and I'll contact appropriate city personnel once that becomes more known. But the folks that need to be involved in that process will be notified. They'll, I think, probably be few and far between on the city side. I imagine that if there are any questions that come up in relation to item number 4 on the agenda, that's the City of Tioga property insurance. I'll be happy to assist where I can. I've reviewed what Dan submitted. I wasn't participatory in that process, but sometimes questions regarding insurance do arise, so I'll stand by should there be any questions on that point. I don't think I have anything further this evening for public presentation, but I imagine over the next few meetings, as I said, there'll be other updates relating to litigation for the city. So I'll leave it there tonight, and I'll let the engineer group take the balance of time this evening.
Thank you. All right, Josh, showtime. Way too much pressure, isn't it?
Okay, good evening. So I have a couple items here tonight. The first is the Northeast Tioga Reconstruction Phase 2 final contractor's application for payment, and then we'll follow that up with the more lengthy portion of the discussion this evening, presentation on some of the evaluation studies we've completed to kind of get you guys all up to speed, and then kind of run through kind of what we know about some outstanding infrastructure that's aging. This discussion there. So with that, I'll jump into the contractor's application for payment. Number 11. This is requested as the final payment for this project from the contractor. The value of that application for payment is $670,027.92. As we kind of previously discussed, Brett and I did have a meeting with the contractor back end of November, discussing the outstanding seeding work. We did receive that quote, which is included in your packet. For the value of that work. I would note the way they included the watering item was by each, and that value, they have $2,400 each time they have to come out to water. That value is not included in the total they've included there. So for essentially for the seeding, they have mobilization, topsoil, black dirt work is needed, seeding and hydro mulch. The value of that work was $39,424.94. And then each time for water, which is $2,400. So kind of figuring, we don't know how much rain we're gonna get and how often or how much water it's gonna take to get things established. But probably eight times or so is kind of what I was figuring, get some drills started. Hopefully some rain of course, and then hopefully some care from residents as well to help ensure that water it's established out there. So that's kind of the value that we're looking at there. Beyond that, previously there had been payment withheld related to the traffic signal that was damaged during construction by the contractor. Value of that was $15,659.43. So that value is essentially being requested in that 670. So they need to be withheld from that value as we look towards getting a final value for payment here. Beyond that, I sent out kind of a summary on project timeframe, liquidated damages that had previously been withheld on that project. So if there's any questions, I'll kind of pause for a minute here if there's any specific questions on that or thoughts at this time from the commission.
Do you have a total on everything that could be and should be withheld from that 670?
Yeah, so that's a little bit of a tough question to answer. The contracted completion date on that project. What did I lose? So the initial completion date was October, substantial completion date was October 1st, 2022, and final completion was November 1st, 2022. There were a few change orders on the project that did result in some time extensions. To date, the currently contracted completion dates are November 8th, 2022 and November 16th, 2022 for final completion. I guess substantial completion was achieved, and certificate was provided on that for November 17th, 2023. So that would have been when substantial completion was achieved, and then beyond that, there's still final completion being also with liquidated damages that could be assessed towards that. So it's, kind of out there a little bit, the project to date technically has not met final completion, of course, with seeding outstanding. So that kind of, gives a little bit of magnitude to where things sit with that. The previous, the last pay application that was presented for approval was January 6th, 2024. At that point, the commission decided to withhold 152 days liquidated damages, which amounts to 243,200. I mean, in reality, if you look at, it's some kind of rough calculations. If you look at, 2 days coming up from the contracted substantial completion date to today, it's 818 days beyond completion. However, I think it could be considered reasonable to account for winter suspensions in a sense, they aren't able, of course, they aren't able to work during those time periods. However, the project should have been completed at the contract date. So
They didn't schedule their work for the winter months anyway. I mean, you can't go off of a 365-day year. I mean, the construction season is what it is, so.
Yeah.
I think it's a decent theory.
Mhm.
It's not a very good one.
Yeah, I mean, generally they wouldn't, on a project of that nature, you can't, once process and you get moisture late in the season, you don't have time. If you look at kind of windows of suitable weather, I guess, from, the 2022 construction season, 23 and 24. It amounts to somewhere around 400 days. That would be, kind of in that construction season, that we know, exists up here.
How many days did you say it was total? 800 and what?
So, yeah, if you look at pure calendar days, we're at 818 days. Which yeah,
It's like $1.3 million.
Even going off of that, not counting the winter months, it's still like a little over 600,000. If we go off that 400, it's more than what they're requesting to be paid, so.
And on top of that, I've spoken to a couple people, and as far as some other punch list items, those items haven't been completed yet to the full. So, on top of the liquidated damages, the hydro seeding, and all these other things, that's gotta be added into that figure as well. So,
that was related to the bollard.
yeah, the ballards, for sure.
What do you think, Scott?
Okay, there's been additional engineering fees as well.
Yeah,
Who
yeah.
pays for that? Did we pay for that?
That has been cost the city's account or paid through configuration.
We got an awful shake out of this deal, didn't we? I mean that, very much so. Hey guys, what do you want to do?
Anything to say, Scott?
Contractor is here if you will want to. Yeah, discussion.
Yeah, you can, if you feel you have anything that's valuable.
The idea of liquidated damages, I read the contract, are supposed to be punitive. Are supposed to not be punitive.
You want to come up to the mic, please?
It's tough for the people at home watching if you.
Okay. So the way I read the contract, the liquidated damages are not supposed to be punitive. They're not there to punish the contractor for not finishing. The reason for liquidated damages, the way the contract reads, is to recoup losses that the city has incurred during the time past the completion date. And I think it'd be really hard to prove in court that your losses or even the 240,000 that has already been withheld from us.
I know for sure we've lost over $313,000 in engineering fees. We don't get that money back. We incurred those charges because you guys drug butt, right?
So engineering charges, yes, absolutely. You are due those.
Okay.
The seating, which I disagree with. I disagree that the project needs to be reseeded. I've expressed that on several occasions. I've asked for final completion over and over and over again, and I get nothing but, negative reactions from your engineer.
I wouldn't blame him for that. The negative reactions come from us.
Okay.
They do. I mean, we've got a pretty strong pulse on how the community feels that project went and where it's at.
And I agree with you. It did not go well. I came in halfway through the project. I wasn't with Strata when it started, and I'm just trying to close out the project. But every time I come to town to look at the project and how it's going, I get nothing but negative feedback from your engineer, the people I run to in the field. I feel like you had a working system when we had final or substantial completion.
Oh, so you felt it was done once upon a time.
That's substantial. So a lot of the stuff that was put on the punch list that is going, the seating for one should have been a warranty issue. It should have never been put on the punch list. It should have been a warranty issue that we would have taken care of a year after we got final completion. And that's the way most projects that I've worked on have gone. You receive final completion, you come back a year later and you fix warranty items. I don't feel like Strata Corporation is the one that is dragging this project out. The punch list that I received at substantial completion was ever evolving. Every time we came back to town to fix something, something else was added to the punch list.
Well, usually when something doesn't get finished and it gets left unfinished, it's probably going to continue to be in worse and worse shape. So that's probably why the punch list gets longer.
So I guess as far as like the ballot. So I believe it's Hanson and Hanson and Fourth, I believe it is. It's right next to the church there,
Yes,
First Baptist Church.
yes.
There's 6 ballards. They're not, I know prior to that work being started, the ballards were straight. Every which direction down.
Okay, that was never brought to my attention.
And there's 3 covers that are not even on there.
Okay, I was told that the covers were put into the park district's hands and they were to be replaced once we replanted the bollards. And this is the first I'm hearing that the ballards are crooked.
And I'm into this, so like I said, I just got on commission in December, so that's, previous to me, but that's why I was informed of. So that's why I'm trying to play catch up, but as far as, I heard as far as like the hydro seeding areas that were hydro seeded, there's a bunch of rocks within the area. Black Deer was never installed. It was just how it laid, that's how it was hydro seeded. And there's a bunch of grass not even growing. So, I mean, if it's clay, it's not gonna grow.
And we addressed that on our conference call, right? Like you initially thought it was hydro seeded, then we found out it was probably a little overgrowth. And then when you tried to get someone to hydro seed, they didn't want to renew their license, so you wanted us to go out for bids for.
But that wasn't the hydro seed. That was the, herbicide to kill the weeds. And I still, since our talk, since our teams meeting, have yet to find anybody that will come to Tioga and spray herbicide. I did find one individual that would come and spray herbicide, but he will not work for the city of Tioga or more engineering. He would work directly with me as a subcontractor and come in and hydro seed. And I don't know, it's not just the city of Tioga. He won't work for any community. He wants to subcontract to a general contractor. And that is a company out of Fargo that would come in and spray the herbicide to kill the weeds.
Yeah, because on the paperwork that I see, there's herbicide weed control. There's 2 lines for that. One is $28,000, another is $2,800. There's 2 lines.
So the 28,000 was changed with the change order. Somebody fat fingered a quarter, it should have been 280 a gallon on both the base bid and the alternate. So both of them should have been about $2,800.
So is that common practice to spray the weed control? I mean, after you guys complete your project, you hydro seed. I mean, is that common practice to go around and spray everything with weed control? Or, I mean, is that just for our instance? Because that seems kind of.
The herbicide should have been sprayed prior to seeding. But even the original subcontractor we had to do the hydro seed excluded that from his quote. He excluded the herbicide. And I didn't know that until we were getting ready to seed, and I started looking for somebody to come herbicide and couldn't find anybody. And that's the reason the herbicide never got laid down.
Scott, you never laid any seed by the log pavilion at all? Nothing. Not one. She was in town seeding this whole community. You never went to the log pavilion once. Me and you have had this discussion multiple times. Bill, you're up there asking for a completion. You haven't completed it. You just shook your head. No, you haven't completed it. We're doing the same thing that happens every time we come to town, right?
So when Verdes came to town, the subcontractor we had, she got in my truck. I brought her around. I showed everything that needed to be seeded. I showed her by the log pavilion. Why that didn't get seeded, I don't know.
I mean, it's not Birdie's fault.
No, well, I pointed it out. They didn't do it. I'm not placing blame anywhere for it not getting seeded.
It was just so easy to fix, that's what I don't understand. It's such an easy thing to fix, move forward. Maybe the people you talk about when you come to town and it doesn't work out for you, and other things get added to your punch list.
But that's not the way a punch list is supposed to work.
I understand.
You're supposed to receive a punch list, you're supposed to complete the punch list, and then you come back a year later for warranty items.
You?
You have a
Excuse me?
movie year.
Yeah, you guys are 3 years overdue.
I understand that.
We can't do another year of come back later, because that'll be another 3 years, I know that. Guys, what do you want to do?
I mean, it's gonna sound harsh, but I don't wanna pay red cent.
Okay.
But that's me, but I'm, I'm only one person.
You know, Strata has recently been bought out by Knife River, and Knife River has some very good lawyers. And
Is that a front?
no, it's not.
Okay, no,
I'm just
hey.
saying that if we
Guys.
can't get final completion and get this project closed out,
Our city attorney is talking.
Yep, sorry, that's okay. I'm on Zoom. If I were there, I would be much more obnoxious in person, I promise. I just want to make sure that I understand a couple of facts and that the commission has possession of those facts before they actually move to vote. I might need to borrow our engineer, sir. You can certainly stay at the podium because I would ask you to confirm those facts. But Josh, did I hear correctly that the initial substantial completion date for this contract was November 1st of 2022?
The initial substantial completion date was October 1st, 2022. And
Okay.
final was November 1st, 2022. Through
Okay.
change orders, those were revised.
November 8th and November 16th.
Yep.
2022.
Correct. Thanks.
Okay, so was it, I'm sorry, was it it went from November 1st to November 8th of 2022?
Substantial completion would have moved from October 1st to November 8th, with final moving from November 1st to November 16th, 2022.
Okay. And when was substantial completion? When did that actually occur? Subject to obviously providing the punch list, which I know is not completely done. When were we notified that it was substantially complete after the change orders?
November 17th, 2023 was when the certificate of substantial completion was issued.
So a year after the extension, we were notified of substantial completion?
Correct.
A
Approximately.
year, yeah, a year and a few days. So
Yep.
more than a year after the extension, we were notified. Okay. And obviously in a 1 year period, how many days are actionable for construction? I realize there's the middle of winter in North Dakota and that's just not very feasible, but you had a calc earlier. Out of 800 days, you said it was about 400. So say in a 1 year period, what's available construction?
It's hard to exactly hit that, but, I'd say generally May 1st through end of October is generally, kind of your window, depending on exactly what activities you're looking at doing.
So loosely May 1 to November 1?
Yes.
So about 6 months. Or 180 days. What is the price per day on the LDs here?
$1,600 per day.
Okay. And then did I just hear as well that we have $313,000 in engineering fees that we accrued at the public's expense as a result of these delays?
Yeah, since the currently contracted substantial completion date, that's roughly what's been accrued through that time period.
Okay. Let me just so we can automatically off the top. I understand what the gentleman was earlier saying, and I don't disagree that liquidated damages are not supposed to be utilized as a punitive device. But what I do want the commission to understand is that they're not superfluous. We don't put those kinds of provisions in contracts so that contractors can walk all over the top of them and say, well, geez, you can't use a contractual term after the fact because it might be injurious to our profit line. They exist for a couple of reasons. And one of the reasons is exactly what we're demonstrating right here, is that the parties agree at the outset that it becomes tremendously expensive and time consumptive to argue about damages that naturally occur as a result of overruns. So at the outset of the contract, punitive or not, the parties enter in an even armed, good solid transaction into an agreement about what those damages actually look like. And everybody agreed to that up front. In fact, the contract that the city entered into is an AIA document. Is that right, Josh? That's our typical form of agreement.
Well, for these projects, it's EJCDC.
Okay, but standard form. An
Very
industry,
similar, yeah, so
yep, a standard form that the industry generates and is highly aware of. Okay, so if the contractor's application is for $670,027.92. I don't have a calculator, so I'll do rough math. 5, 2, 5, 10, 7. All right, so even if we just took off the engineering fees, you come down to $257,027.92. And then if we went really low ball, if the city didn't consider the totality of a year of overages, on the off chance that they might deem it punitive, and I haven't hit the fat fingered typographical area yet, but let's take 1,600. I think math is helpful to overcome threats of litigation if we do it on the record. Times 180 days, that's May 1 to November 1. And again, I think the city would be generous at that. That's $288,000. And that means the city's still underwater, even if they waive half of the year of overage. I mean, the city's within its rights to withhold up to the application. And I hope that Strata's not standing here threatening to sue the city because it's 3 years over on a contract with liquidated damages it's agreed to, when even if the city waives half of the damages that it contractually agreed to and just counts the engineering fees, you guys are way over. And I think I heard Mr. Judkins, but I'm not sure. He's not wrong. It's not fair to come up here and chide the engineer when the engineer's out there doing his job, asking other people to do theirs, and then threaten litigation against the city. So for what it's worth with the commission, I'm not suggesting that you do or don't pay or elect not to pay at all this contractor's application, but just doing that math right there, the damages and the engineering fees exceed this pay application. So you're well within your rights, whatever you may choose.
That was a way nicer way of putting it than I would have. So Liz, I appreciate that. Kyle, it's yours.
Well, I make a motion, we reject the proposal for $670,027.92 in regards to this pay application.
I'll second.
All right, we got a motion and a second to reject pay act number 11 in the amount of $670,027.92. Any discussion on that? You want to move to a vote?
Yes.
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 Okay, that motion carries. Hey Josh, forward looking now, right?
okay. So we'll jump to the next item here then. Our presentation we've been promising here for a while and discussing. So I'll move to the next slide. So introduction briefly. You all know me, Josh with Morning Project Manager. I have Josh Hassel joining me online. He's our water resources commuter in our West Fargo office and kind of, I guess, led the group that was handling the evaluation up at the dam. Josh, if you want to chime in real briefly.
Yeah, I can. Nice to meet everybody here. I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but yeah, Josh Hassel, leader of the Water Resources Group here. Been with Moore Engineering for 15 years, basically focused on water resources projects, dams, diversions, all sorts of flood control projects.
Yeah, I'll move forward here. The quick agenda, just run through some recently completed studies in the Tioga Dam safety improvements, the Southwest Tioga drainage study, and citywide SCADA integration, and then we'll move into kind of just a higher level look at what infrastructure needs there could potentially be outstanding in the city going forward. So I'll turn it over to Josh here to run through the Tioga Dam safety improvements.
All right, I'm going to try to take control so I can work the slides if that's all right. All right, did that work? Perfect. Okay, so I'll kick this off here. But basically I'll summarize the work that we completed here on the dam safety improvements. A little bit of background here. The dam safety improvement study here is basically came out of the inspection report from 2020 that highlighted some issues and suggested some investigation into some potential issues at the dam, both from a hydrologic and hydraulic standpoint in evaluating the structures that are out there, and then also a geotechnical evaluation for slope stability, erosion, and seepage. And forgive me, I tend to talk a little fast. This is not the first time I've given this presentation, so feel free to stop me and ask questions if anything does come up here. And I'll try to keep it brief enough to give you background, but also I understand that you guys have a fairly lengthy meeting tonight potentially, so I'll go as fast or as slow as you guys need me to go. So this is a summary. This is a summary of that inspection report from 2020. And it had a number of recommendations, a couple of which I highlighted on already. And I'll touch on some of the key ones here. And a few of these do tie back to just general maintenance on operation of a dam facility. But there's a number of these that are directed at basically safety for the dam safety components. So the first couple here, install filter diaphragm around the conduits or provide sufficient data that indicates it's not needed, and install filter zones or toe drains to provide sufficient data indicated as not needed. Ultimately, those are safe practices for dams to allow the seepage that moves through the dam to discharge in a controlled fashion. Every dam leaks, water seeps through it. It's nearly impossible to stop a dam from seeping water. And ultimately, based off the age of this dam and the information that we have, that key infrastructure is not there. And so these are recommended really to improve the safety of the dam. That third bullet there, perform slope stability analysis to determine stable configurations for the dam embankment. That is one part that we did take on as part of this effort to do a geotechnical evaluation of the embankments that are out there. These next couple are really more maintenance related, but repair upstream scarps or erosion locations, and that a lot of times is due to the wave action from sustained pools, and you can see that out there in various locations along the embankments. And then ultimately that next bullet there, basically protect those eroded areas with appropriately sized riprap to prevent that erosion from continuing into the future. Clear obstacles around the principal spillway, Stilling Basin, that outlet. Regrade the downstream area, maintain clear and unobstructed discharge channel. Clear trees and woody vegetation within 25 feet of the dam embankment. Clear vegetation and large trees from impeding auxiliary spillway. Mow grass to approximately 3 inches of height on embankments and 20 feet beyond the toe of the embankments. Implement seepage monitoring plan, initiate erosion control program, and then finally here is evaluate the hydraulic performance of the principal spillway. So as I noted, most of those are more maintenance items and good practice with regard to dam infrastructure, and that perform slope stability analysis, And then evaluate hydraulic performance or the principal spillway. That is the items that we tackled here as part of our effort. I'll first touch on the hydrology and hydraulic evaluation. And so we did not start from scratch on this. There was a bunch of existing modeling that had been completed through study of the dam by either the state or HDR and as part of the EAP that was initially done. And so all we did at this point was we took those existing models and we updated them. We updated them to include the most current Atlas 14 rainfall depths, the rainfall distribution. We used the North Dakota Department of Water Resources PMP study tool, which is relatively new. And then we created a more accurate version of the Outlet Works rating curve based off of some updated survey that we completed. The one thing I do want to stop and point out here is this next bullet. When we initiated this study, it was late 2022 or early 2023. And at that time, the current standards for dam design were the 1985 Dam Design Handbook standards. And so we evaluated the facility based off of those standards. And at that time, the primary spillway through the principal spillway through the dam must pass the 50-year, 24-hour design storm without engaging the auxiliary spillway. And that's the emergency spillway or auxiliary spillway is the more appropriate way to talk about it in today's standards. Since before we actually completed the study, the DWR did release a draft version in August of 2023 of their new standards, which do follow a little bit more closely with the federal standards for design. And so the one thing I do want to point out today is that moving forward, we likely will have to look at those new design standards prior to the commission making any decisions moving forward, because the standards that we used are old now. And so as you apply for a permit, as that red line indicates there, as you apply for a permit, dams are supposed to be brought into compliance with the current standards with any permittable activity. And so the other thing I do want to stop and talk about quickly there is when we talk about any permittable activity, that could be any improvements to the dam beyond just regular maintenance. And so when we talk about like a seepage filter or a seepage diaphragm to help control that seepage through the dam, you would need to get a construction permit from the state to modify the dam. And ultimately, based off the new standards, that could trigger you into bringing the dam into compliance from a hydraulic standpoint. And so I think I've got some other slides here to dive into that a little bit more and kind of some of the key points there. But the next piece here is I'll walk you through some of the alternatives that we went through in this hydraulic evaluation, basically what we would have to do to the principal spillway or the emergency spillway or the auxiliary spillway to bring it into compliance with dam design criteria based off those 85 standards. I guess before I get into these, I'll just take a quick minute to stop and see if there's any questions. Okay, I'll take that as I'm doing a great job so far. So just to, I'll highlight these alternatives. Alternative one here is we looked at modifications to this principal spillway and the normal pool water surface elevation or expanding storage to ultimately meet the 85 dam design criteria. Alternative two is a fairly simple one. Based off the 85 standards, if you could not pass that 50-year 24-hour event, then you were required to basically have a structural spillway. So installing a structural spillway at that time would have met the dam design standards and ultimately could have addressed the issue. Alternative three, we modified the auxiliary spillway and then embankment F. And so I got a map here that kind of talks through these alternatives. It also has all of the embankments labeled. And so starting right to left, we've got A through F. So A being the large embankment on the east side of the dam, F being the large embankment on the west side of the dam. And then you've got a number of embankments in between B, C, D, and E. Just to kind of highlight a couple pieces on this, we do have that auxiliary emergency spillway profile shown on here. And then you'll see a couple of dashed lines. And what those dashed lines show is ultimately we looked at the existing location of the dam, but we also looked at potentially moving that embankment to incorporate additional storage such that it will allow us to potentially reduce the size of the primary spillway based off the design criteria. Alternative 3, this one really is relating back to the emergency spillway, and I do have a little bit more information on this as well here in the next slide. But with alternative 3, the idea behind this alternative was we could raise the auxiliary spillway up such that it was not engaging on the 50-year event. And by doing this, it simplifies the level of effort in that we would bring in basically earthen material, build that up. And then the one item that we would have to do on this one is we would have to raise up a small portion of, I believe it was embankment F. And so ultimately, this is the only work on this one would be really raising that auxiliary spillway and then a little bit of embankment work. And at that time, to meet the 85 dam design criteria, this would have worked. So this is the additional information that kind of dives into what we did and the size of the spillways that would be required. And so if you need me, stop me, and I can go back and forth between the various alternative maps that I just showed. But for alternative 1, again, this was looking at modifying that principal spillway and ultimately adjusting the normal pool water surface elevation if we needed to basically make the dam meet design criteria. And so this first option with the normal pool water surface elevation at 2285.4, that would be at existing conditions. Again, assuming that the water surface elevation was at the top of that inlet structure for the primary spillway. And so in order to meet the dam design criteria, we would have to install a 72-inch RCP pipe in place of the 18-inch that's there today to meet the dam design criteria hydraulically. That second bullet there is basically moving that embankment A to the east and providing additional storage and a larger reservoir footprint. We could knock that down to a 66-inch pipe. The second, I'll call them options just for the sake of discussion here, since we already use alternative on here. But the second option here was we would reduce that normal pool water surface elevation down about 5.5 feet to an elevation of 2280. And ultimately what that does is it's going to lower the pool and provide us additional effective storage above that. And in that case, we would be able to maintain that 18-inch RCP pipe that's through the spillway today. And then that third option is kind of a combination of lowering the normal pool and adding that additional storage to the east. And so by doing the additional storage, instead of dropping down to an elevation of 2280, we were able to drop down to an elevation of 2282 for the normal pool, which is about a 3.5 foot drop approximately. As I mentioned on alternative 2, that's the structural spillway, auxiliary spillway. So ultimately that's basically installing a structural spillway, which would have met the design at the time. And then alternative 3, that's the modification to the auxiliary spillway and basically raising that up by about 3 feet, a little over 3 feet. And then we would be able to maintain the existing principal spillway and normal pool water surface elevation. And as I noted, embankment F would have to be raised by about 1/10 of a foot in order to not overtop during the full PMP, which is the probable maximum precipitation flood event. Are there any questions on any of those alternatives before I jump forward?
Can you kind of describe the structural spillway a little bit, Josh?
Yeah, and maybe I've got the plan set open, so what I will do here quick is just jump over to this, if that's all right. And then you can see what that structure looks like. Let me know when that pops up for everybody.
Yep.
Okay, so this is from the old original plans, or actually the modified plans, I believe, by the state. And so ultimately, the way that structure is set up today is we have a weir inlet, a box inlet here, and this is what controls that normal water pool. And I know that we've heard a lot of comments during this study that you know, the water's level is not up to that inlet elevation, and it's actually lower. You can see that full structure. Part of that is it fluctuates with weather. Part of that could be due to the seepage that was noted in the inspection reports as well, and has been documented a couple times. And then we've got this, and I'll zoom in here so you can see the size. We've got this 18-inch RCP pressure pipe that runs from that inlet structure, and this is kind of cut here, but here's the outlet structure. So that 18-inch pipe runs down and eventually hits a 30-inch pipe with basically a built-in energy dissipator, and ultimately it's got a vent. And I don't know if I've ever seen a full picture of this actually in the field. I know this outlet structure was hard to find at some point, but that is what was originally installed at the time. And so when I talk about updating those sizes, and so like that 72-inch pipe option and the 66-inch pipe option, basically what I'm saying is take this 18-inch pipe and replace it with a 6-foot diameter pipe or a 5.5-foot diameter pipe. There's a couple other details on here with a low flow drawdown. I won't get into that, but I guess that is what the structure looks like today, based off of what was installed and what we know from investigation. So I'll stop sharing. You can reshare that, and I'll request control again. I guess any other questions on the alternatives before I dive into the geotechnical portion?
Yeah, I have a question there.
Yeah, go ahead.
So no matter whatever alternative we choose, do we have to drain water, enough water to do whatever option safely, or how does that all work? Or is the water low enough where whatever option we want to pick? I mean, because that has to play back to
Yeah, that's a great question. And ultimately, I would say it depends. If there's a way that we can safely install the structure using cofferdams or those types of things to pull that water away and expose the primary spillway and replace it and do the work, we could definitely do that. You will likely see in terms of bidding probably a higher bid value for dewatering just to control the water, because even with cofferdams you will see some seepage and you will see some groundwater, and so but there are options, I'll say, in that. Ultimately, I think we'd want to work with what's out there as much as possible, and not necessarily dewater the entire dam, but it really does come down to what is that end result and that final alternative.
Now, my other question is, no matter whatever alternative we pick, I mean, does that in a sense affect the people that are in the flooding zone? I mean, would that affect their premium that they have to pay, or, because I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll hit on that here, but I do have that as a talking point up ahead, but I will hit on that now. And so when you look at the alternatives that we've got in front of you, and I like where your head's at, because you're absolutely right. When you think of how that dam is limiting flows there today, you're basically bringing all that water that's flowing into the dam and running it through an 18-inch pipe. And so you are utilizing that dam really as flood control in addition to recreation. And so when you look at potentially installing the 72-inch pipe, you're going to end up passing a lot more flow through the dam because you're passing all of the flow with really little storage, effective storage being utilized. And ultimately, you're right, there will be potentially impacts downstream. And the reason I think it's good that that's where your mind kind of leads is because there's a couple items when you look forward into the new dam design criteria. And I mentioned earlier that when you do a permittable activity, you could be forced to and required to bring the dam into compliance from a hydraulic standpoint. And so, but the new dam design criteria does have the potential for a deviation request. And basically that would be a request to deviate from policy and from the standard that the state has set for a given reason. And so we actually met with the state engineer's office, the dam safety folks, Karen Goff and others on this to talk about this. To date, I'm not aware that there has been any deviation request that's actually been submitted to the state. And so what we initially talked through is, what would the state want to see to support a deviation request and ultimately to deviate from the policy. And we talked through some additional analysis and ultimately showing decision-making by the city to narrow down and let's say, as we evaluate the dam and the downstream infrastructure, maybe you can put in a 30-inch pipe that's larger than the 18, so it gets you closer to meeting the standards, but is not large enough where it could potentially impact downstream landowners and have structure impacts. That's the type of information that they would like to see to help support that deviation request. Because ultimately, like I said, if you put a 72-inch pipe through in the dam as the primary or principal spillway, you're going to have a lot more water seen down that flow path downstream. And so moving forward, what you guys do not have enough information today is to make that decision. That's ultimately because we would have to reanalyze that to the new design criteria. And that's just unfortunate timing based off of the release of their information. We did ask them. I had been a part of a number of dam projects here over the last couple of years. When we knew that they were in the process of drafting these potential guidelines, we had asked them a number of times for a number of projects to provide that information ahead of time. And they basically said, we won't provide it until it becomes a draft. And so we were kind of, our hands were tied behind our back in terms of this analysis. And we had no idea that draft would come out on I think it was August 8th or something like that. But so that's just unfortunate timing. But ultimately, to help support that deviation request, we would probably have to hone in on what are the downstream impacts and how do we balance dam safety and improvements with mitigating downstream impacts and still keeping that flood control benefit that's there today.
Then one more question is the last one.
Mm-hmm.
With the seepage that the dam has right now, I mean, is there anything that's safety wise where we need to be alarmed? Or does that seem pretty normal seepage wise?
Yeah, I'll table that question. Yeah, I'll table that question for a couple minutes because I will hit on that here in the next couple slides. Does that work?
No, that's fine, thanks.
Okay, yep. Any other questions on the alternatives before I jump to the geotech? All right, well, we can come back if there are any. Oh, there we go. So this is the same map as far as the embankments here, but I'll talk about the geotechnical evaluation that was done and all the work that was completed. And so we, bear with me, there we go. Sorry, I think my computer's a little slow here. All right. So the geotechnical evaluation, this is the effort that was completed as part of their portion of the project here in that slope stability analysis. So we did 10 standard penetration test borings, 19 cone penetration tests, the evaluation of slope stability, and then the evaluation of seepage. And then they developed a couple alternatives here to address both the stability and the seepage. And so ultimately, kind of getting back to the question that you just asked in terms of safety, I'll walk you through this table here. But basically the analytical condition, that is what they were determining or what they were evaluating in terms of steepage, downstream slope stability. That minimum factor of safety, that is the minimum factor of safety that we want to see in terms of that analysis. And then the next two columns, the factor of safety for cross section 2, which is embankment F, and the factor of safety for cross section 2 or for 7 is embankment A. And so when you see the black in here, that's basically indicating that it's meeting the minimum factors of safety that the geotechs are looking for. If it is red, it is not meeting that, and that's where something is recommended to be done to address it. And so when we look at the steady seepage at the normal water surface elevation, the downstream slope stability, and the transient seepage at the 100-year peak, those first three rows there, for embankment A, that embankment is failing in all three of those analysis. And what I mean by failing is that it's not meeting the desired minimum factor of safety from a geotechnical perspective. And so indicating that something should be done to help address that and minimize risk. And I'll just go back here quick to the map here, just to remind you of embankment A on the east side and embankment F on the west side here. And so moving forward to the alternatives to help address this, we've got a couple of alternatives, and the geotech recommends that whatever alternative is selected, it be applied to both embankment A and F, even though A is the one that is not meeting the minimum factors of safety. And so the first alternative here is a buttress alternative. And I've got a diagram there that is showing you what that is. Excuse me. And ultimately, what the buttress alternative is going to do is it's going to add some embankment on the downstream side or the dry side of the dam and widen that embankment out. And then also provide, you can see that little 18-inch filter in there. And that is basically a sand filter to allow the water that is migrated through the dam, because again, all dams do leak, to discharge safely. And so this will address the minimum factors of safety that we just talked about. The other item that you can kind of see in there at the bottom of that buttress example is the seepage diaphragm. And what that is similar to the that buttress and sand filter. That's basically a sand filter around the primary spillway to help take any water that happens to be traversing along that primary spillway and congregate into one place, and then discharge that. And so those are the in addition to addressing the factors of safety in terms of the slope stability and the seepage analysis, those are also two items that were recommended as part of the inspection report to be done just from a safety perspective to discharge that seepage that's moving through safely. The second option that we've got in here is a slurry wall. And ultimately, the idea behind this is a bentonite or concrete wall put into the middle of the dam embankment, ultimately to attempt to cut off as much of that seepage as possible. And ultimately, we would go down below the EG and kind of create that solid wall again to slow down the seepage. The one item that we're addressing with the second option as opposed to the first option is trying to slow down that seepage and minimize it. The buttress option does not necessarily do anything to stop seepage. It just controls it such that you have a lower risk of failure. The slurry wall, the idea behind that is that we're trying to slow and minimize that seepage such that you can try to maintain a higher normal water surface elevation beyond, as I mentioned earlier, it's been low. And some of that is Mother Nature and being dry. Other parts of that likely are due to seepage through the dam. There we go. And we did put some cost estimates together for those two options. And there is some contingencies in there because there's a lot of questions that I think need to be answered as well. The only other thing that I'll point out is we do not have any the any modifications to the primary or auxiliary spillways are not included in these estimates. And so this is just more for talking points and ultimately to help with kind of your thought process on, addressing the dam safety issues while trying to potentially address the recreational components of the dam as well. We do have on here the cost share. So this would be an improvement to the dam, a safety improvement. And so it is eligible for cost share up to potentially 60%, depending upon how the state evaluates that at the Department of Water Resources. And then we also have some other funding partners that are out there as well. In addition to the Commission Outdoor Heritage Fund, there is a federal high hazard dam rehabilitation grant, which this dam is a high hazard dam that's out there. I do want to point out that there are no projects in North Dakota that have received that I'm aware of yet. That grant is intended to be for projects that are ready to be built tomorrow. Like you've got your permits or close to getting your permits, you've got your design done. I have talked to the state on that grant, and they are willing to support, and they would actually have to help submit for that grant. But that would provide access to federal dollars to help potentially reduce the overall cost of the project. And then there might be some others. If I'm not the ones that are on here are 3 solid options, but there may be some others that we can find potentially through looking and reaching out to Game and Fish or U.S. Fish and Wildlife potentially and see if there's other funding sources that we could tap to try to make the local costs cheaper. So here's just kind of a summary of what we know and what we don't know. So we know that the city wants to keep the dam as it provides a combination of recreational and flood control benefits. The city wants to keep the water level as close to the existing principal spillway as possible for recreation. Maintenance items need to be needed as called out in the inspection report. Mowing, tree clearing, scarp repairs, riprap installation, etc. And these can change. This is just what we had prepared initially. So if you guys decide that you want to change your focus, by all means, that is your guys's call, and we'll help you in as any way that we can. Some of the unknowns. So the hydraulic requirements. As I noted a couple times here, current standards dictate that dams must be brought into compliance from a hydraulic perspective with any permittable activity. If required, upsizing will need to be completed. Likely upsizing, and kind of getting back to the question earlier, potentially downstream capacity to either pass the flows or potentially request that deviation such that you won't need to do any downsizing or upsizing downstream. And then we talked a little bit, and it was alluded to here, potential impacts to the FEMA floodplain mapping. Next steps. Meet with DWR regarding the permitting, select an alternative, and I will touch back on that permitting piece. I mentioned this before, but really the next step here would be to evaluate this based off of what you've heard today. You could possibly be leaning towards a specific alternative, but ultimately it would be to evaluate the principal spillway based and the auxiliary spillway hydraulically based off the current dam design standards, which were implemented in 2024. And then the next piece would be to select an alternative, apply for final design funding, complete final design, submit for permits. Once all those permits are acquired, you'd be eligible for cost share funding for construction, and then ultimately construction. And I did put on here, approximately 1 to 2 years from the alternative selection with regard to, inception to likely construction. And there's a number of reasons for that. One, funding. There's timelines on the funding with regard to the DWR. So even submitting for final design funding will take a little bit of time. Ultimately, design will take some time, especially based off of whatever alternative you guys select, both geotechnically and hydraulically. And then ultimately, the permit. The permits have been taking quite some time from a state perspective. Just to give you an idea, we have a dam in Mayville that failed here back in 2022. We submitted that permit, I believe, back in May of 24, and we just got it about a month ago. So there's about 7 to 8 months of time from submittal of the permit to the state with all the analysis and that type of supporting documentation to the time we actually got a permit. And once we got the construction permit in that case, it then triggered the floodway review, which could potentially happen in this case as well. And that part, just in essence of, or to be very clear, the way that the state is reviewing permits is they're looking at the construction permit first. And then if there is a floodway review or a no rise that's necessary as part of the project, they will review that after. And the thought process behind that is if anything changes from the construction permit review, let's say you have to change the size of a pipe or something of that nature, it could impact that floodway review as well. And so that's just based off the last couple applications that we've submitted, that's the way that the state is processing these. And so ultimately you could look at a year's worth of permitting from the state's perspective, depending upon their workload and staffing and all that type of stuff. So just being very upfront in what could come forward here. So I guess with that is all I've got on the dams. I know there's a lot of information there. We have a memo too that we could distribute to everybody if you haven't seen that yet. It talks about basically all this stuff in a memo form with the exhibits attached. And I'll stop and pause again and see if there's any additional questions.
So, Josh, correct me, I'm gonna try and make it a little, there was a lot of technical information there,
Yep.
of course. Just kind of high level, non-water resources engineer terms. So basically the state has their, it's biannual, correct? Or is it every 4 years, Josh? That they do the inspections?
It depends upon the hazard classification of the dams. And so some they review more frequently, but it's a minimum, I believe, once every 5 years. They need to look at a dam.
So essentially they do their regular inspections, and there's been this list of things that they've continually noted on the last 2 or 3 inspections they've had. So that's kind of what triggered investigating this. And it's been determined that it does not meet the slope stability, it's essentially the structural component of the dam or the hydraulic capacity. So it doesn't meet those 2 criteria. And, is it, at what point does the state come and say, you shall do this, or is it, is it something that, how lax are they on that? And then beyond that, it's, kind of just generally maintenance type things, not major issues. And kind of related to, is the dam gonna fail? I mean, that's anybody's guess. There's nothing, I guess, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, there's nothing pointing to imminent failure or anything like that. I just want to make that clear. It just doesn't meet the major requirements there.
Yeah, I would echo that. There's nothing that indicates an immediate failure is imminent. It's just there are issues that should be addressed in terms of dam safety.
Okay, we'll move on. Okay, the next one was the Southwest Tioga drainage study. So this evaluation we did is related to kind of the drainage that comes from Hess across the county road there that spills into a pond, which is, it somewhat acts as a detention pond, but there's no real outlet to it, so it essentially just spills over ground, flows overland down to what would be a future 6th Street on the west side of Dakota, where it crosses under that future roadway and a culvert. And then there's a drainage ditch that flows along the west side of the apartment building. And then it makes its way down to the detention pond at the corner of Dakota and 67th, and then flows east east from there along the north side of 67. So, you know, a couple things with this, the area, that drainage ditch along the back side of those apartment buildings. It's been, I guess, noted to me that on at least a couple of occasions, especially during spring runoff, there's been water up to their stoops, basically, you know, nearly entering the buildings. So that's kind of one driver that kind of initiated some of this evaluation, as well as there's a few pictures here. Dakota Street, just north of 67th there, has in the last 2-3 years has failed due to, and that's primarily related to that should be kind of a low area. There's no real outlet for water to actually fully move out of there. It just kind of sits in that ditch along there, saturates the ground beneath that road. So that was kind of another component of why we were directed to kind of start looking at this area. So I'll move into the conceptual alternatives and let Josh take this as well. Kind of leading this charge as well with the evaluations.
Yeah, I can definitely take this on. And so the map that you see here in front of you shows a number of things. Ultimately, it shows 3 alternatives that are highlighted in the various colors of blue. And then with each alternative, there's a common alignment. That's that gray line on the upstream side. And so I'll walk through these alternatives, and these next maps have quite a bit of information on them. So we'll stop and talk about each one. But ultimately, the goal here is the same for all the alternatives, and that's passing the water along that route into a storm sewer system, a series of pipes, inlets to convey that water downstream, while meeting the city's requirements for a storm system. And that is key, and we'll talk about that here at the end. But so here's conceptual alignment 1, alternative 1 here. And the one thing, and it might be hard to see for everybody, but we've got segments that are called out from the northwest to the south. And ultimately those segments are lettered A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc. And then on the right-hand side of this map, you can see the table, and what that table is it's corresponding that route or that reach of pipe, and then ultimately giving you a length and a size. And so with this alternative, it starts off on the upstream side near that pond as a 24-inch pipe, and then progresses downstream through the various segments up to a 30, a 48, and then ultimately a 60-inch pipe. And it's actually a 60-inch pipe for a majority of the route, again, due to the design requirements. And all these maps are very similar, so I'll talk about all 3 of them fairly quick here, and then ultimately kind of get to a little bit of a discussion point. So second alternative, this one, I should maybe go back and say for this alternative number 1, it does change where that water will outlet and bringing this water to the south, as opposed to the east, where that water naturally goes when it does get high enough through the cemetery there, and making its way downstream. This alternative is, again, very similar. The information's all the same, lettered, reaches west to east. Ultimately, it does get back to the same channel, just a little bit further downstream from where it naturally outlets. And again, you know, from a size perspective, we're looking at sizes starting at 24 and ultimately ending up at 66 inches on this alternative. Alternative 3 here, again, I sound like a broken record, but the same thing. This is just taking that water straight south, as opposed to following the roadway there, and ultimately, again, discharging that south tributary. Again, with this alternative, we're looking at similar to that other south alternative, which is anywhere from a 24 to a 60-inch pipe. And all of these pipes, I believe I got on the next slide. So all these alternatives we've analyzed using HDPE pipe, so smooth wall pipe. Has the same efficiency similar to concrete, but cheaper. And the sizes are anywhere between 24-inch and 60-inch for the two alternatives, and then ultimately 66-inch for alternative number 2 to meet the design criteria from the stormwater management ordinance. And ultimately, that ordinance basically states the hydraulic grade line shall not exceed the ground surface on a 50-year 24-hour event. And ultimately, the 100-year 24-hour needs to be contained within the street right away. And so I do have a little bit of discussion topic here just to kind of highlight how this is different from some other communities. Not that it needs to be changed, but I wanted to provide that context to help provide some background on why these pipe sizes are so large to help convey this flow. And ultimately, to meet that 50-year design criteria without basically surcharging on those pipes above the existing ground, it needs to be large enough to convey those flows for a 50-year event, which is a large flood frequency event. And just to give you some context with regard to the DOT, they require 80% full pipe flow on the design event, and there is some variation whether it's the 10-year or the 5-year, whether it's regional or urban. City of Mandan for minor systems is 2-year and a 5-year. City of Bismarck, 6-inch surcharge, I believe at the top of the end of the pipe on the 5-year. 100-year flow needs to stay within the roadway. On Fargo is basically no surcharging on the 2-year or the 5-year, depending upon whether it's commercial or residential as well. So ultimately, the alternatives that we have put together here do meet the requirements that are laid out in the ordinance. But again, this is just providing you a little bit more context as to why they are so large. And ultimately, because they are so large, that does lead to obviously a more expensive project to install that pipe and address the issues that you guys saw there. So with that, again, I'll stop and open it up to questions, and Josh and I can kind of tag team it from here.
Does it have to be designated to just gravity feed? Is that why the pipes are so large? Because like we have a holding pond, right? Why couldn't is there any rules saying that you can't use transfer pumps? I mean, because you can sling 20, 30, 40,000 barrels a day through a 6-inch or 8-inch pipe, depending on what your pressure threshold is. Like, if we needed to evacuate a pond quick, that would be the way to do it. So is there a reason why the pipe has to be so large? So there's no mechanical properties to it?
Yeah, I'll chime in and I'll let Josh add to it as needed. So kind of what he was talking with the ordinance, so that's and I don't know when that ordinance was adopted by the city, but at some point prior to my time, the city adopted a stormwater management ordinance, which lays out criteria for sizing pipes and all that when you're looking at these drainage projects. So basically what he's getting at there is the city has a pretty stringent requirement in comparison to, many larger communities and throughout the region and state. So with considering that, if the city were to look at revising that ordinance, we could get those pipe sizes down. Your question related to pumping, you absolutely can look at pumping, but I think the cost of elimination of some sort to do that, and it's probably going to be comparable cost to just putting in a gravity system at the end of the day.
The other, if I can jump into the other item, and what you're saying, I think is a valid consideration. But the only other thing that I do want to point out is and I'll go back to the map here for those alternatives. And so that water from the Hess property is coming through here and ultimately hitting that pond, and that's where you're talking about installing a pump. The only other item that I wanted to point out is that there are other areas that drain to that area along the roadway behind those complexes, and ultimately with that with that, you would still need, if you want to address that problem as well, you would still need some inlets that would still need to meet that ordinance of the 50-year for that local drainage. And so you could possibly reduce the pipe sizes by doing that and addressing the local, but then you're also adding in that pump cost. And like Josh said, you're likely going to end up with something that's similar in terms of cost.
You'd be surprised. This is oil filled country. That's what we do. When we build flats, we build saltwater transfer skids. I mean, this is kind of our jam.
Yep.
We might be able to help with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Some of that can be.
You want to get rid of fluid quick, you kind of know how to do it.
So as far as that one option right there that's showing on the screen, have you guys contacted the landowner? I mean, are they?
No, we haven't had any of those discussions, kind of purely conceptual, but, look at what the options are for getting the water out there, so.
So as far as the pipe getting put in the ground, let's just say that we go the one, whatever option, but most of them are 60-inch diameter pipe. I mean, how far below the surface are you putting the top of that pipe?
Do we have a decent profile on that, Josh? I can't recall, but, you know, at the upper end of the system, it's, 3 feet deep or something like that. There's, there is, of course, as you go down, there's gonna be some rising elevation, so there's probably some areas you're 10 feet deep to the top of the pipe, somewhere in there, just throwing a number at it.
And I'm gonna see if I can find a exhibit here that'll help show that.
It's gonna be a massive trench.
I was just thinking by the time it gets a mile south, I mean, a 60-inch pipe, that's way in the ground.
Mhm.
And then by the time you're probably gonna have to dig out the outlet side as well, I would assume.
Mhm.
To make sure it actually flows into the drain.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, as you move towards those waterways, drops off as you get there, but there is probably in between the inlet and outlet, there's gonna be some areas where ground elevation will be higher, causing some damage.
Okay, so what are you looking at for cost for
Those,
cheapest option and most expensive?
with the pipe sizes that we currently have today, we were estimating 2.5 to 3.5 million ballpark, on between those three alternatives.
Josh, this might be a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it. Earlier, you referenced the fact that, and I don't have a recollection of, of the ordinance on point for this matter either. So that may certainly have even pre-existed my time with the city. If the city were to review its ordinance, and if the city established that there was a less stringent standard in play here by revising its ordinance, does that change price or plan? If at all?
Yeah, there would be pretty substantial cost savings. We don't, until we were to evaluate it at that, at the new quote unquote new standard, the pipe sizes are gonna come down. I don't know if it's gonna be, a maximum of a 24-inch or a 30-inch pipe versus we're looking at 60 or 66-inch pipe. So they'll come down pretty dramatically, and get into those real large pipe sizes. It becomes a lot more expensive, of course.
Is that something you and the other Josh, sorry, that's a little goofy to the Joshes maybe. Is that something you can advise and assist us with if the commission determines that might be appropriate? I mean, it
Yeah,
sounds like maybe we're over-regulating ourselves. Maybe that's the wrong word, but
Yeah, no, it absolutely is something we can have further discussion on and provide some.
okay, perfect, thanks.
Do you know what ordinance that is?
I don't off the top of my head. I'll get that to you guys.
Please, thank you.
Yep. Okay. Well, we will move on unless there's any further questions on that. We're gonna start cruising through this, so. We'll get a little less detailed, things will get a little more high level. But this is the last one that we have a little more detail on. So the citywide SCADA integration, we did look at this here, August 23. We did prepare a annual report, for the SCADA. For those that may not be familiar with those systems, it's supervisory control and data acquisition. Essentially a system for the public works staff to monitor, control infrastructure components such as lift stations, water tower, wastewater plant, etc. So in back in August of 23, we did put together a memo on this. What we evaluated were two drinking water system components. Why is that not updated?
Sorry, I think I was still sharing, Josh.
Okay, so the two drinking water systems we looked at was the RMT meter vaults 1 and 2, and the standpipe. Ultimately, while we were looking at this, we were informed that the standpipe in the north end of town was bypassed and not in use, and so there's no need. But with the meter vaults, essentially those are where the water system essentially goes from RMT to the city. There's meters there. Currently, RMT does have SCADA components in place. Everything's there. And it sounds like at that time, public works staff had talked with them, and they were open to the city getting that data available to them on that system, so that essentially we can access direct flows, pressures, all those any alarms that may be going off on that system into the city's current system. So the next one was the wastewater treatment plant and the master lift station generator monitoring. So both those, the treatment plant and master lift station are both on the system. However, after those projects were constructed, the city did add generators there. However, the generators monitoring, if they're running, if there's a fault, any type of issue there, those currently are not connected into the system. So we looked at that. Essentially to get those brought on. There was integrator services, electrical contractor, generator configuration, and some electrical engineering. The industrial park lift station and generator. So that is an older lift station in town. Neither of them are on the SCADA system. Electrical equipment out there is kind of getting towards the end of its expected life. So essentially what the recommendation there was to replace and relocate the control panel. That lift station's kind of funky if you're familiar with it. It's real close to the road, kind of like it's built into a little bit of a hill. So kind of at that time of replacing that control panel, probably push it back further off the road to protect it better. So again, integrated controls, electrical contractor, generator configuration, some electrical engineering. The next one is the Badlands Lift Station, control panel and generator. So that's the lift station, south of town along Highway 40 at the apartments down there. That lift station is about 12 years old. The lift station and generator currently are not integrated when that lift station was built. I don't know, I think the city may not have had a SCADA system at all at that point. Not entirely positive, but before my time, I guess. So essentially what would be proposed there would be to add a second smaller control panel for housing the equipment for getting that into the integrated into the data that the city has. Again, similar services required to accomplish that. Any questions on that? I think that one was kind of there. It was during a blizzard that lift station had went down a few years ago, and there was a lot of concern from public works staff at that time. So that was kind of when we started looking at that. You know, the first couple items are relatively inexpensive. I think the you know, Badlands lift station and the industrial park lift station are, you know, $150,000 project somewhere in that range. So
Could we reach out to WAM here locally? I mean, they do that integration and, yeah, sure. And just based off of what you're showing, I don't think we'd even have to go a Modbus route. We could just go three-way radio and tie straight into our PLCs. I mean, as far as R&T goes, sounds like just a simple data sharing agreement. to get
yeah,
access
there
to that.
probably needs to be some form of agreement and then some integration done from that end.
I'm not saying you gotta use WAM, but they're local and they can make easy work of all that. Be worth reaching out to them.
Sure. Okay. Now we'll move on. Drinking water, so we'll move kind of into just a high level discussion on, you know, drinking water, sanitary sewer, throughout town. So the drinking water supply and storage, of course, you're supplied water by R&P, so that's kind of dealing with the quality and quantity of water. I don't see any concerns there. Haven't heard any complaints, and I believe they have adequate supply for the city. Your storage, 750,000 gallon elevated water tower that was constructed in 2016. I believe the public works staff over the years have had some inspections done by some groups that do that work, and they've had miscellaneous meetings, but there hasn't been any major concerns on that front. So wastewater treatment facility project, that was well constructed in 2016 timeframe. Heard some operational maintenance needs out there from time to time. Don't know the exact status of all those, but don't have any issues on that front. It's something we can consider to look at. Okay, water distribution and sanitary sewer collection systems. So over the past 6 years, we've been reconstructed approximately 48 blocks of those pieces of infrastructure. From mapping, again, that mapping kind of goes back in time and don't necessarily have 100% trust in that it's 100% entirely accurate. But from what we have, it shows there's approximately 16 blocks of cast iron aging water mains out there, as well as about 24 blocks of clay tile sanitary sewer. So they're kind of your aging pieces of those pieces of infrastructure that can be looked at to do these improvements to those services going. Water distribution, sanitary sewer capacity, I know the city, probably 10, 12 years ago, did some pretty major, upgrades to address capacity, you know, trunk sewers, trunk water mains. So I don't necessarily see any concern, on that front. And then the last thing is just fire flows and hydrant coverage, making sure that hydrants are available when areas needed to be able to fight fires as they may arise. This map, it's probably hard to see, but kind of just highlights the areas that you appear to have aging water. And I can share this information with you too, so you have take a closer look at it. But again, your aging sewer areas, Benson Street, moving across on 4th Street Northwest, Corning, Dakota, North Dakota, and then Willard Boulevard, and there's a little segment that goes off Linda Street over towards the school. That's Bay tile sewer as well. Any questions on those pieces? Okay, drainage system, city's drainage system is composed of ditches and pipe. You're aware, so maintenance, replacement needs, you know, there's some deterioration of structures, pipe damage castings, things like that. And just general ditch reading or something that reading itself, that may be causing ponding in areas. Drainage capacity deficiencies, really you know, a lot of times those are more so pointed out and then addressed, but we kind of looked at the southwest drainage study area. That's probably a priority in that context. And then we just look at the nuisance ponding, pavement causing pavement deterioration or groundwater impacts. Roadway network, again, city's done pretty hefty load of work on streets in recent years. There are some roadways that are kind of at the point of failure or potentially needing mill and overlay. Your gravel roadways, is there a desire to look at those, potentially paving them or adding curb and gutter, that type of thing. Those areas that are currently gravel. Of course, you have the seal coat project contracted for so that's good step in protecting those pavements going forward. Pedestrian facilities, again, you know, you kind of look at your neighborhood sidewalk network. It's been expanded throughout projects through recent years. More of a question, is there gaps throughout town or lack of connectivity that people are noticing? Things to keep in mind when you look at your multi-use trails, Signal Road from the high school over to Cashwell, and then North Main, Signal Road up to the down. And of course, the recreational trail, the trail that was just constructed this last summer. Lighting system, kind of just going through the whole gamut of the infrastructure. So primarily your street lighting is provided by MDU. There are some streets that the city owns the lighting on. Excuse me, being Main Street from Second Street to 5th Street South. There's potentially some others out there, but those were the ones that came to mind first. So, and then just other kind of facilities, buildings, equipment. So I'll pause there. I have a few more real quick slides, but very high level.
so. Grease lightning through the last couple.
Okay. So I guess kind of this discussion leads into capital improvement planning. Really what that entails is, accounting for all your infrastructure needs, costs, developing, a thorough plan. Nick, there's varying levels. You can have a back of a bar napkin type thing, or you can get pretty detailed. So, I think that's probably a good direction for the city to head. Getting some input from the public, of course, finding out what the needs really are, prioritizing them, developing funding mechanisms, having kind of a schedule of how you want to move forward with those, with any infrastructure needs. So what are the steps, capital improvement plan? Really just a quick high level, create it, maintain it, and execute. Creating steps to creating the capital improvement plan are determining your assets, determining what are needs versus wants, determining what improvements are necessary to address those needs or wants, developing your funding mechanisms, getting funding applications in, allocating other city funds, prioritizing it, and then of course schedule, determining when going into the future those projects would make sense to complete, and then draft. At that point, you draft the capital improvement plan and then adopt it as a board. Maintaining it, really, it's the same thing. Just reevaluating as you move forward in time, making sure priorities change, needs change, all that. So just kind of keeping that document up to date, and then of course executing. So the CIP process really falls under developing the concept, planning that project out and designing it. And then once the project moves to construction, it would move over to the capital planning process. So yeah, spun through that quickly. Towards the end, we had some highly detailed stuff early on, but wanted to send from you. So I appreciate the time.
Could you put together the costs for either resurfacing or even paving 67th from 40 all the way to the intersection? So paved to paved. I don't know what you guys have been hearing from the community.
I've wanted that for years. It's just never.
Yeah, I've been,
get the list.
there's been multiple people that have called me, text me. One of the concerns, and it's nothing but mud and muck. And it would help with less mud coming through town, keep the streets clean and things like that. So that would be beneficial.
That's probably a concrete road. I mean, high level thinking, but
Okay.
fair amount of truck traffic on it. I mean, can be a heavy section because with the amount of truck traffic down there.
You have some big time businesses on that road too. Maybe we could do some sort of JV with them or shared service. You never know what kind of participation we could get from them.
Yeah.
But it's gotta be irritating for them to drive on too.
My guess is you could get some participation, just going off of,
Well, the township should be able to get some sort of grant as well, correct?
I know there's been discussion of that in the past, the township that I believe applied for something.
Being the chairman of the township myself, we've been, this would be one of our projects to beautify our city and the edge of our township. And our past auditor had a bid about 3 years ago or 4 years ago to get it done. And the township did put in a grant request, with those numbers. But if we could get an upgraded, grant request, such as you were saying, Josh, that would be helpful in, going forward with that project. The township would just be absolutely tickled, be by the edge of the city, you know, which we all live and love. And that would be great. The Kiowa Township is on board, big time.
For this options.
Yeah,
Sounds like.
I think the trucking companies that are along that, road, you know, I would imagine they probably would, limit it to what they can move in and out of there, so they might entertain such things.
They also put calcium chloride down on that road a couple times a year, which is extremely expensive.
I mean, we have it in the budget, there's just nothing allocated for it, so I mean, it's something that has definitely been talked about. So,
That's really the only thing I've heard from the community. I know we've got a lot of wants and needs, but I think we got 16 million wants roped up on the northeast side of town, so. I think we gotta focus more on needs than anything, and community feels like we need that, and we gotta look at it. Bucky, what do you want in town? What would you love to have in town?
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
No.
I'm with you. 67th Street today is, what I want.
I think that's a lot from a lot of people for a long time.
There's been a lot of complaints we've gotten in the city office to, you know, the dust, you know, and now it happens right before, a week or two before, and they get the calcium chloride on, you know, but it's just a never ending.
and I'm sure along that line, you know, how often are the city crews out blading that road trying to keep it passable. I mean, it's ongoing.
It's a nightmare. I know the public works guys would like it done too.
What about you, Tyler? What do you want to see?
69.
Oh,
Yeah, favorite. Tom Cruise. And the Kentucky Fried Chicken.
No.
yeah, that was kind of the point of tonight, was trying to get a grasp on what we wanted to do, what we needed to do. Like I said, we have a whole lot of wants wrapped up on the northeast part of town right now, but
I guess one question, I guess, is, obviously, like some of the water lines that you mentioned are aging. Is there any that we know of that are like, in, like, dire need to be changed?
It could be a ticking time bomb. You know, there were a couple of the, I don't know which projects specifically, but there were, as we were moving into spring, project had been, construction hadn't started in like 3 weeks before construction started. There was like 2 water breaks on that project, so it was like, but I mean, not from what I've heard, I haven't heard of any major water breaks or anything.
I mean, anything could happen anytime, but I mean, we're not really worried about one specific place, basically.
Yeah, I haven't heard any from public works staff or anything that's, you know, imminent, or as a lot of, you know, those areas that were replaced recently, that were, you know, five, 6 breaks, block that had been spliced together, you know, but I believe that to be the case.
But you said we've got number 48 blocks done?
Yeah, yep, in the last 6.
Significant amount of blocks. Not too shabby, actually.
Yeah, I mean, really, the city
16 blocks
has been much better infrastructure wise than a lot of communities across the state. And a lot more, outdated aging infrastructure out there, so.
Moving on.
Okay,
Thanks, Josh.
thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it.
All right, Mr. Carabello, you're up. I think we did this already.
Close. I brought it to you guys, but we didn't vote on it. I just brought to you guys to look at last time.
Okay.
So I'll be short and sweet. In essence, sorry. No. The contract has been, the assignment for County has been given to APC. They're doing their part of it now. Once we get back, we'll issue the notice to proceed. At that point, we'll have met all the deliverables from our design contract with you guys. So that brought forward here is the construction contract to be able to do the construction services for this project.
Right, because we talked about how you were just gonna own this project.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, so you need a motion to approve the construction engineering bid?
Yep.
Got that in front of you? It's 21,500. You heard him. He said he's gonna absolutely own this project.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to, approve the application that posted 21,500 for roads.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the construction engineering proposal for pros. Move to a vote.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you, guys.
So. All right, moving on to new business. Number 4, Dan.
Getting right to the point here for, on the review of the insurance for properties here in Tioga. I think the biggest question from the insurance agent was an amount for self-insurance. It's kind of like, right now we have a $2,000 deductible. When you turn in a claim, we pay the first $2,000 and then the insurance takes over. Usually public entities coming from the state level of the insurance fund. She said that usually there's like a $10,000 or somewhere in that figure for self-insurance. In other words, before there would be a claim on presented to a claim, against a fence or against a building, on property. So it's whether we wanted to do that or not, that's a question, or if we just want to keep the insurance and the deductible as it is, or increase the deductible. And then I also have on there inflation replacement cost for structures. If we want to have that included in the policy, so that's just an automatic renewal. Municipalities, commercial, that is not an automatic, like it is for your house type of insurance. So that is an option that we could add to our policy. These would be options that she would present a number for before anything was approved, or if it needed to be, well, I would think it would need to be approved for that. Right now, we just have basic coverage, anything that's listed. If it's not listed on the policy and not identified, there's no insurance. And so, there's also an option in there, that was kind of, she termed it as a blanket policy. Items still need to be listed and identified, but there's a lot more wiggle room in there with that, so as to cover ourselves for things that happen a lot. If there's an addition or joining of two buildings, a shed, for example, if you join two sheds together, make one building, which was done at the swimming pool several years back. There were two sheds there, and then it was joined into one. And I think there was maybe even a little addition to it. I mean, some of those little details, it would cover those little details without telling them. There's been a lot of work done in the last few years, like the floating dock and the bridge across. That there is no coverage or insurance for that, other than what they call an inland marine policy, a separate policy. But that is limited to its coverage, because they do not cover any wind, ice, wave action type of damage to the dock.
So everything that could happen to it, they're not gonna cover anyway.
Yeah, so the only coverage, if you do put insurance on it, would be if there was an act of vandalism. Would be about the only thing for coverage. She could quote us for that, if you want, but, it probably is, a number would be quite high. But I don't know. She can quote it, and then we'll know. If you want, if you deem it worth that, but it's basically just on the vandalism side of it. And if you have, of course, that might be separate, because it's not part of the structural part of the policies. But I mean, if we do go with a part where you have a higher deductible, if you will, there would be, yeah, but. So we've been going through things that were covered or that are not covered. And there was a number of things that were, not a number of things, but there's a few things that were of significance that didn't even have insurance on. So that's kind of one thing led to another, to then end up reviewing and looking at the whole picture as we had discussed earlier.
All right, what do you guys think? The real high dollar item I see looks like it already is insured, which is the log pavilion. Otherwise, it's,
Most of the pavilions are covered, most of them, but not all of them were, as far as the current policy. So some were missing.
You said we already have like a blanket insurance, or that's what we could get?
That's what we can get, yeah. And she said, Tracy said that she would try to be available when she writes this up, to be able to come and then be able to explain maybe a little bit better than what I can explain it, and was told briefly when she told me. But she would come with some numbers, but she'd like to have some kind of a solid decision from you on what you would like. If at all possible. Otherwise, she'd be quoting all kinds of stuff from A to Z, and we're only gonna pick one.
right, yeah, this could really get huge quick.
I mean, we don't wanna split hairs here on everything. We just wanna have things so that we have some decent coverage. And then, of course, have to what point? Do we leave it at a $2,000 deductible, or do we increase that deductible? To 4,000 or 5,000, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it all depends what the premium is, because most of the time when you have a lot of stuff that's spread out, just like a lot of companies around here, they are self-insured, because, I mean, eventually, if you're paying more in premiums than what you would ever have as far as.
Then what you would get back, yeah, and not that So that's what they said, that usually with municipalities and cities, there is an aspect of self-insured, insurance. And then anything above that value of whether it's 10,000, and she used that figure, they were told 10,000. Not to say it has to be that, but it could be less or it could be more. Um, And as far as inflation, replacement costs, there would be, I think would be an added premium. Because things keep going up.
Probably the biggest thing. I won't spend too much time on this one.
I mean, she can present the numbers with inflation coverage and then without, I mean, a couple of those things. And then if you want to do the self-insured aspect of it or higher deductible.
Let's just have her get numbers for all of it. I mean,
Yeah,
it'd be nice to know what we're looking at, I mean, just the only thing is, like, have her drop numbers for, basically everything high dollar. Let's make sure that's covered. Let's get numbers on that. And then let's get numbers for blanket policy. And then let's get numbers for, the self insurance as well. I mean, we might as well just have 3-4 different figures.
Okay.
I'm not really too sure about the dock and the bridge and the dam. I don't know that that's super high priority.
I think anything might have gone wrong, sure.
There's not much there to cover. I mean, it's high bucks, but
I guess if it's all right with you guys, maybe pass on that, but.
Yeah.
Let's get numbers for everything else.
yeah.
that's on that list there. I mean, the generators at lift stations, now there's no coverage on
I
those.
mean, anything that's like high dollar, if there's like a building from the little shack from the 90s, I don't know that that's super important, but anything, high dollar.
Even an old building, if it's used for storage or for something that's used for a purpose, and if that were destroyed, now you gotta replace it. Would it be a $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 replacement? I don't know.
That's who our engineer is.
None of our generators were covered?
I don't believe so. Yeah, currently, it says on here, currently not insured.
Yeah, that's what it says. So, I mean, definitely.
I mean, that's a fire, they're exposed to a potential fire and potential, probably if somebody were to ram into it and then got away, you couldn't identify who it was. So,
Yeah, have her put some numbers together and then we can at least weigh it, whether we want to be self-insured or have a policy for all this stuff. And we'll have to, I suppose Jane will be in charge of keeping track of everything.
Sure.
I guess, yeah.
All right, Jane, you're up, number 5. So, background, I guess. Deputy Auditor Promotion and Raise Recommendation. Or
Okay, so if you remember back, I suppose it was in December, I requested to, essentially look for, another deputy auditor position. And, I spent a little bit of time trying to fill that role, but didn't have any luck. And while that was going on, Shani has been, her title is administrative assistant, but she's been kind of stepping into that field and starting to, take on some deputy auditor roles, so I think it's only fitting that she get, get paid for that, so, she's been really good, she's handled everything that we've put in front of her with a really good attitude, and, yeah, I think it's totally worth, bumping her up to, a deputy auditor, so.
I make a motion to, put that promotion and raise recommendation that's posted to, deputy auditor position for Jackie.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second to approve the promotion and raise recommendation for Annie Ramsey. Any discussion on that? Probably not discussion, but I do want to add to that. I know the effort you put into trying to find somebody. And I knew we promised we were gonna be as creative as possible, no matter how that looked. And I've also noticed how Annie has made both of our lives a lot easier than it could have been. That was never asked of her. She just stepped up and did it. So during this whole little stretch of being shorthanded, it was pretty remarkable how someone took the initiative to make everybody's lives easier. Which just proved that she's a perfect fit for us, and we need to afford her every opportunity we can to advance, so. I like it. We got a motion and a second to approve the raise and promotion. We'll move to a vote.
Yes.
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 Okay, motion carries. And. What's that? One.
Yeah, I'm not doing very good. You don't-
Hey, good evening, Chief Nelson. So historically, our department's always had a second supervisor, somebody that can take command of the department in my absence or the absence of their chief of police. Our last sergeant departed our agency back in June of 2023. So that position has been vacant for a little while. I have seen the downside of what not having a established second in command, the adverse effects that can have on my department. And so I'm looking to rectify that. I held interviews with three of my folks that have submitted letters of interest for a sergeant position within the agency. Each one of them brings very unique skill sets to the table. And it isn't very difficult, this decision between the three. However, I was able to narrow it down. My recommendation is to promote Sarah Litton to the role of sergeant. Sarah has fulfilled, in essence, the roles and responsibilities of this position since summer of 2020. Or 2023, excuse me. Yeah, since the departure of our last sergeant. She's already very familiar with that role. She's established within it and has proven herself to be a valuable asset in that area.
I look confused. Not saying she's not great, but I very firmly remember she was leaving. She was out the door just not that many months ago.
Right.
I know nobody has a crystal ball, but
Yeah, I think.
what stops someone from wanting to leave permanently?
I don't know that it would want to ever stop anybody from leaving permanently. However, having somebody in that position that has demonstrated that they're able to maintain a high level of department standards that she has, affords the ability that should she decide she wants to leave in a year or two, that the two others that have also applied for that position below her have had the time within the agency to learn the agency and establish those same standards that they can then hold others accountable to.
You know, I support you, and that was just a question.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question.
It's your department, you gotta run it the way you wanna run it, need to run it.
Well, there's some much needed structure there, right? Cause you need a second in command, so when you go to do whatever you need to do, then everybody knows who's in charge and what's going on, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Is she gonna continue doing the detective work as well?
Yes, she will continue to do that. However, probably a discussion for another time unless you want to entertain it tonight, is I don't necessarily want to have a monopoly in one position either. And I think that it would be appropriate to reestablish a detective position solely for that purpose that I can advertise for within the department. And then she, with her experience in investigations, can help guide and lead somebody in that detective role that's new to that. So that way we can always maintain a solid investigator within the agency. I think that would be incredibly important.
By the way, I see the Williston Police Department did a shout out to the Tyler PD this weekend.
Yeah, we had a long day on Sunday.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Well, I will make a motion to approve Sarah Litton for the sergeant promotion and the raise recommendation.
Is there a way, we can backdate that to the first of this month? Since we're on like the 3rd today, is that right?
It would either be backdate, I can backdate it to the February 1st, because we haven't come to that payroll yet.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking previously about January 16th, or not that one, to the
No,
first.
what I'm looking for, like, I want to approve her today and officially promote her tomorrow. And for the payroll purposes, it would make it easier for Veronica to make that effective for the beginning of this current pay period that we're in.
In Josh's defense, I think when he was looking at a January 16th type date, I was still looking through the interviews and stuff like that too. I wasn't quite ready to help make that.
Well, and that was, yeah, there was some, yeah, I was finalizing what I wanted to do there, but also, you know, we had, sort of business in the mix as well.
So Jaden and I have been looking at our pay structures and step schedules and intervals on raises and stuff like that. And it's just all over the place. So there's no standardization for it. It's just kind of like a free for all. It looks like it's been going on for a really long time. Sure. The only thing I would recommend is if we do raises and promotions and stuff, you can do that whatever, but it should never take into effect until the start of the next pay period, the future pay period.
Okay,
I mean, that's just how it works.
that's fine. I don't have a problem with that.
And these guys.
February 1st pay period has not happened yet.
What's that?
The February 1st pay period has not happened yet. Because the February 1st pay period doesn't end until February 15th.
That's what I'm saying. Do whatever you want as far as titles, positions, pay rate, but it normally shouldn't take effect until the next coming pay period.
So after February 15th.
Right.
I only asked that, it was consistent with how we've done things in the past, but if that's what you guys want, I'll go by what your recommendations are on that. I don't think.
So I work, at raise and promotion and, or raise, what, 3 weeks ago? Knowing it wouldn't take into effect until the next pay period. That's just something we do, so everybody's on the same starting line. Sure.
Can I make a comment? The raise and promotion recommendation that was just approved is for a start date of pay raise of January 16th. On the previous one that was just approved.
if the commission, and that may have been an error, if the commission needs to revisit the last promotion to remain consistent in policy and as a practical payroll matter, it can certainly entertain a motion to review the prior promotion, make a motion to amend the date at which that compensation would increase, and correct that if they feel it's necessary for consistency.
Should we revisit that one then?
I think we just, we start standardizing some of this stuff.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
So like. Whatever what was, and you know, pull it up. That was 131. The raise and promotion thing, and since the thing is we don't have an effective date on this form.
At the very bottom, there is.
Why don't I see that on the promotion and pay recommendation for the PD? Where's the effective date?
I wound up writing in my pen, before I came up and just seeing if maybe I had forgotten to write it in on the copy I gave Veronica.
You said February 15th.
I actually just started the pay period for January 16th through January 31st today. So I have not finished it at all. So I'm just starting it today. But the next pay period would start February 1st through the 6th, through the 15th.
Push it out a couple days first.
We can do February 1st. That's 2 days ago, right?
Yeah, but we're not on that pay period yet. I think is what she's trying to.
It's been common that we have actually backdated pays in the past, which we end up just in making a correction on the next time period, on the next pay period that they get paid. They get a wage for back pay on if there was a difference in wage. And then there's some retirement reports that get submitted. It's a little more work, but we've done that before. That's actually been quite common practice as well.
Yeah, we'll say that she has fulfilled all of the roles and responsibilities of the sergeant, even as a detective. So I mean, we're talking a matter of 3 days, and she may have only worked one shift of that. I mean, she has technically earned it. I mean, she's done the work.
Right. And what do you want to do?
If you wanna just hold everything to the same standard, then maybe we could go back, bump Shanny's to the next pay period, and then just approve for, Sarah's for the next pay period too. This is the same, right? No, we're not.
So they would both be effective February 15th.
So we need 2 pay periods, not one. February 1st hasn't started yet. We're still on.
So if you start at February
it could be-
15th, that's the very end of the pay period.
be
I can't make it effective for one day. It's got to be for the start of a pay period through the entire pay period. I don't
think
have a
what-
way to adjust wages
Yep.
within a pay period.
I think that's, I think Brett was just off by a day, Veronica. I think what he's suggesting is that we're midway through the existing pay period. It would probably be inefficient, even if it's been done before, to retroactively go back and do back pay and, file amended forms for retirement. So I think what he's suggesting is that in the event of a promotion or raise, the standard policy would be that it take effect at that employee's next pay period, whatever day that may be. Am I understanding that correctly, Brett?
Yeah, then we don't have to. Yeah, it's just a standardized way of doing things.
Which would be February 1st. That would be the next pay period.
That is correct.
happen. Or, sorry, I didn't create that much.
No, we're
Still learning
stuff
stuff.
and we're finding stuff left and right where consistency's been an issue. So it's time to get on that level slate.
So it says right in, I mean, the step schedule, it says if pay period change lands in the middle of a pay period, it will not be implemented until the next beginning pay period. It says right in there.
That's what we follow, do it, but
So,
Yeah, I swear, I don't just think this stuff up.
No, I didn't think
So
so.
would that be February first then, or would that be after the 15th?
It would be after the
I guess it'd be
15th.
after the 15th, right?
So it'd be effective 2/16, right? Cause that'd be the start of that pay period.
If you're going to look for the next pay period, if you're looking at the current day that we're in, then the next pay period from today, the 3rd, would be the 16th. But there's nothing started on the pay, we are currently in the pay period between February 1st and the 15th.
Let's just go to the 16th and the next pay period.
Left off with test and step, personal. Was there a second?
I don't think there was a second that I can recall. I'll second that motion.
Okay, we got a motion and a second for the promotion and raise. Recommendation for Sarah Litton. Question on that, we move to a vote.
Okay, well, now so do we need to add the effective dateness into the motion now?
So do we offer her the position on the 16th then?
Offer her it now, either reset, accepts or rejects, and it will be effective next pay period.
So she wouldn't start the position until the 16th then?
It's like when you hire someone, they accept a job offer, they have their start date down the road.
Sure.
Okay.
So we modify the motion with the.
I mean, just for specific reasons or I don't know.
Yeah, let's do that.
So do I need to pull back my last motion?
I think you can just amend.
You
it.
don't, yeah,
I
you
think
don't
you
need to
can amend
rescind
it.
it. Just
You can amend
move,
your motion. For the start.
nope, it's already been voted on. Just move to reconsider your last motion. Do that first. Move to reconsider your motion regarding the promotion of
We
Shanny.
voted on Chanel's, but not Sarah's.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going back to Shanny. I'll shut up. Go ahead. Amend your
We'll
motion
have to
for,
fix that too, but there is good.
All right. I'll make a motion to approve Sarah Litton effective February 16th for the promotion to sergeant.
I'll second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. To approve the promotion and raise for Sarah Litton effective February 16th. Move to a vote.
Yes.
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 Okay, motion carries. We'll
Thank you.
run back to Shaney.
who made the motion to approve Shanny's? Whoever that person is should make the motion to reconsider.
It was Kyle. So I'll make a motion to reconsider the start date for February 16th for deputy auditor for the promotion and raise.
Whoever seconded last time should second, if you can remember
I'll
offhand.
second.
Okay.
All right, Kyle, the motion and a second to reconsider the start date for Chanel Ramsey's promotion and raise to deputy auditor to make it effective February 16th, 2025.
Correct.
Move to a vote.
Yes.
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 Okay, that motion carries. Consent agenda. So we got the January 2025 bills and then the First State Bank and Trust pledge holdings as of 12/31/2024.
I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Please vote.
Yes.
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 And then lastly, go ahead, Kyle.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. We'll move to a vote.
Yes.
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 Carries. We are adjourned at 9:32 p.m.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Okay.